Stephanie Nadjid. I'm the grants coordinator for the Coastal Resources Division here with the Georgia Coastal Management Program. And today we are going to talk about the Coastal Incentive Grant Program. I'm going to give you a little bit of background information about the program, discuss what the application process is like for this current cycle that's coming up, and also give some tips and recommendations on how to write a good proposal. We do have some significant changes in this cycle. Since it's our 20-year anniversary, we decided, let's make a big change. And we have a much different application process than we have had in the past. Many of the themes are the same. A lot of the funding amounts and conditions are very similar, but the process itself and the timeline is different. So you want to make sure you pay attention to that. And I'll be sure to point those out as well. We also have with us Jan McKinnon, who is our program manager. She is also has expertise in living shorelines and wetland and ocean restoration and conservation and management work. So when we get to the themes, I'll be calling on the staff that are present today to also give some additional information if I don't cover something, or if people have questions that require specific expertise. We do have some folks here in the audience that can provide some answers. So Jan has a lot of good research wetland experience. Jennifer Klein is here. She is our hazards and resiliency expert. So if anybody has questions on that theme when we get to it. Kelly Hill is here, and she is our sustainability and green growth, non-point source pollution expert person. Sonny Emmerich was going to be here today. He couldn't be here this morning though. He's our public access expert, but I can also answer questions in that regard as well. And Jill Andrews is here, and she is our section chief, and she has broad knowledge of just about everything. So, to give you a little bit of background, the Coastal Incentive Grant Program is a federally funded program through the Department of Natural Resources, Coastal Resources Division, through our program, the Georgia Coastal Management Program. It is funded by NOAA, and we do have to apply for this funding every year. Approximately 40% to 50% of the funding that comes to us is available as pass-through grants, sub-grants to eligible entities, which I'll get to in a moment. And that's generally around $750,000, sometimes $800,000. In each year, we do have to apply for this grant, and all of the CIG applications that are recommended by the Technical Review Committee are included in the grant. Now, even though we may say your application or your project is recommended, it is officially up to NOAA to say, yes, these projects will go through. So they do have an opportunity to review the proposals, review the projects, and if they have any questions with any of them, we may have to come back and ask for additional information, or they haven't yet, knock on wood, but they might end up not approving a project. So if that were to ever happen, we would let you know. But we have to wait until NOAA gives the official approval on our grant before we can actually say, yes, you're good to go, and we can enter into a contract. The goals of the program are to support the mission of the Georgia Coastal Management Program, which is to balance economic development with protection of Georgia's cultural and natural resources. We also require that these projects address local and regional coastal resource protection. And in a moment when we go over the eligible entities, you'll see our geographic range. But they also can support research, but it has to be towards specific coastal management needs. And so the key word there is it's got to be coastal. It can't be just an isolated wetland within one of the 11 counties. It has to have some connection to the coast. So our eligible recipients are local governments in the 11 coastal county service area. That includes Effingham, Chatham, Bryan, Liberty, Long, Wayne, McIntosh, Glenn, Brantley, Charlton, and Camden counties. So it's the 6 direct coastal counties and then the 5 inland. And staff-affiliated research and educational institutions statewide. But if you are a research institution and you're doing a project, and it has to be a project in one of these 11 coastal counties. And then any regional or state agencies except DNR. Since DNR is the recipient of the grant, we're not allowed to give ourselves any more money. So these pass-through grants go to other state agencies that have projects occurring in those 11 coastal counties as well. So before we get into the different types of proposals this program covers, is there any questions on the CIG basics? Okay. So a proposal, which is essentially your application, there's a specific format, and we're going to get to that later on in the presentation. But it is a planning document that is going to put together in an orderly fashion all the information needed so that you can have an informed decision. Types of these proposals include research, planning, education and outreach, construction, which we call 306A, and critical local need. So research proposals are going to address a documented coastal management need. They are going to produce some kind of information or product or result that is going to have a direct use to coastal managers. Research projects are not going to be projects that are research for the sake of research. They have to have some kind of benefit to coastal managers or the local communities that the work is being done for or with. A lot of researchers sometimes partner with counties or cities in order to generate a better proposal. So one of the projects that we have an example up here is a marsh dieback research project. We have a lot of research projects that come in that actually directly benefit things that Jan McKinnon is doing on salt marsh restoration, living shoreline work. And so she'll get those results and incorporate those into management decisions and further research needs. Planning proposals are typically submitted to us by local governments. They can be local or regional planning. A lot of times local governments will hire contractors to do various planning documents for them, such as ordinance development or development of best management practices for the community, resource inventories, and sometimes GIS mapping or GIS inventories. So one of the example here is Kingsland had a sustainable planning development project that they hired somebody to create the plan for. Education and outreach proposals. A lot of these come from those regional councils, regional communities to do public stewardship activities, create community awareness within the local community, within the county or the city. Curriculum development from teachers, Board of Education, and then various workshops and trainings. And so the example here was Chatham County created a ecology education curriculum for K through 6th grade for their school system. Construction and acquisition proposals are called our 306As, and they are called 306As because NOAA has a low-cost construction checklist, and it's all called 306A guidance for low-cost construction projects. There are several additional requirements if you're going to do a construction or acquisition project, and we'll go over some of those in a moment. But types of projects that are included here require public access to a natural or cultural coastal resource. So it has to be a coastal property or a coastal connection, and then you have to have public access. It's not just acquisition of land for preservation purposes only. There has to be some kind of public access provided. So types of projects we have here are boardwalks and nature trails, boating and fishing docks, beach dune crossovers. And all of those that I just mentioned were all theme related. They're going to fit into one of our themes that we're going to go over here shortly. These critical local need proposals are projects that are not theme related, and they will have very different funding requirements than our theme related projects. Critical local needs generally come from local governments who are who have a document that is approved by their county or city commissioners that says this is a priority for us, this creation of a comprehensive plan or creation of some kind of recreational plan. The themes right now are so broad that we haven't had many of these critical local need projects come in. And because of the funding differences, it's better to go with a theme-related project. But there are times where there might be a project that is going to be really great for this local community, but it's not associated with any theme, and they just need $20,000 to create this plan. And so those kinds of things would fit here. These projects do have to still meet our mission of balancing that economic development with the natural resource, and they have to be identified in some kind of approved plan, and that plan has to be provided with the application to show that it has been approved and is part of the planning needs. Is there any questions on the types of proposals that are eligible? Okay. So our themes have stayed the same since last year, but we did add one, which you'll see at the end here. So the first theme is oceans and wetlands. And as I had mentioned, our themes are fairly broad. So it's really, it's really difficult to actually try to get a project that fits into that critical local need, because most of the time they will fit into some theme. Oceans and wetlands generally is our research theme. Most of the universities that come in with proposals end up falling into this category for maintaining or improving wetlands, conservation and restoration of habitat, understanding oceans and wetlands, and then one of the things that we're interested in is roles of buffers and maintaining function of salt marshes and other coastal waters. And this is not a comprehensive list of anything that can fit in here. These are just examples of projects that have come in that would fit under the oceans and wetlands theme. Public access and land conservation is the second theme. This is generally those 306A construction projects will fit into this category, or anything else where you're acquiring property for conservation or creating public access of some kind, whether it's on existing property or on newly acquired property. It has these projects add or enhance physical access for the public to those coastal resources. But these projects also can be public access planning projects. So if you aren't ready for construction yet and you want to create a plan for public access, then you could first go into this theme for the planning for the first year, and then on another year apply for a low-cost construction project to try to implement that plan. It's also for the conservation of riparian habitats through acquisition. That's fee simple acquisition, not conservation easements. Land conservation through management planning and practices, and any analysis of needs or opportunities for habitat protection. So resource inventories for public access. So the Sustainable Communities theme is quite broad, but it does cover, it mainly covers those sustainable development goals, improving communities through green infrastructure, trying to determine cost-benefit analysis of creating those sustainability goals, and anything that's going to support sustainable development. So we have a couple of projects right now that fit into this category. Tybee Island has done a carrying capacity study for the island. So they've hired somebody to look at the population on the island and come up with a plan of how many people can actually live there. We also have a project where they're doing designs for smart parking lots and doing a cost-benefit analysis of keeping existing parking lot construction versus implementing permeable pavement, increased trees in the parking lots, and so trying to show the cost and benefits of doing either of those. There's also been various studies on green infrastructure, trying to plan, create ordinances to plan for improvements in green infrastructure like rain gardens. Kelly, did you want to add anything to this one?
Model ordinances would be a key one. It's development of any kind of ordinance in local government, I think, would fall under this theme. Most ordinances, anyway.
And then our fourth theme is disaster resiliency and coastal hazards. These projects are going to help improve understanding of coastal hazards and the potential impact those hazards have on the local community. They are also going to, these projects will help develop, implement, or incorporate mitigation strategies, plans, or policies. For instance, we have had several communities now do disaster recovery and redevelopment plans through this theme and CIG funding. And also this theme can help strengthen the local government's implementation of the community rating system with FEMA. So we actually have a couple projects that have also had local communities hire contractors to do the analysis of the community and actually go through the application process with FEMA in order to get CRS credits to help their citizens with insurance rates. Jennifer, did you want to add anything else to this? And the fifth theme is a new theme this year. So this is non-point source pollution theme, and when I'm done with this slide, I'm going to ask Kelly maybe to give a little more clarification if I'm not clear. But these projects under this theme are going to help improve existing urban runoff control in coastal watersheds, and they're going to address those stormwater quantity and quality improvement needs through VMPs by using the Georgia Coastal Stormwater Supplement. This theme is not for construction projects. CIGs are not eligible funding to create stormwater ponds or stormwater infrastructure. So we can't construct a stormwater project, but we can help plan for something with those BMPs and utilizing the supplement. Correct?
Yes. Funding those engineered drawings or planning documents that can be expensive as well before the construction phase.
Yeah. And then the non-theme, as I had mentioned, is the critical local need. It must meet the GCAMP mission. It must implement a local government priority and be documented in some fashion by an approved planning document. Some examples that have come up that have been critical local need are if a community needs a comprehensive plan. That doesn't really fit into any particular theme, but if the county commission has some in minutes of a meeting has said, yes, we want to create a comprehensive plan, then this critical local need could be there to help that community actually create that plan. Or implement the plan. So once a comprehensive plan has been created, if there are elements in that plan that don't fit a theme, then they might be eligible as an application in this process. I think that's the last slide there. Yeah.
Can you go back to that non-natural resource?
Yep.
Sorry, can you further explain that?
Yeah, it's kind of a tricky category. I believe when this program was first developed, there were a number of communities that didn't have comprehensive plans or didn't have natural resource plans of some kind or didn't have recreational plans, and so it was developed to help those communities get their get started. And now at this point, after 20 years, we don't see this come up very often. Most people fit a project into one of the themes. We kept it this year, but during staff discussions, it's likely we're going to just take this away, possibly for next year. We just have to evaluate what kind of applications come in and look at the past 15 years, 20 years, and see. But we haven't.
Help out too. When the Custom Center Grant Program started, there was one theme, and it was water quality. And so this was a catch-all for the local governments to provide seed money for other initiatives. But Steph, you're exactly right. I mean, we've come so far in 20 years.
Yeah. So it's still just there in case some communities need it, but staff has done so much great outreach that I don't think there are any that are kind of really need seed money. Is there any question on any of the other themes? Yes.
I'm curious about whether a proposal could touch on multiple themes or multiple aspects of a theme. For example, if I were planning to write a proposal on, more with a focus on wetlands conservation and research, if it also touched upon resilience in terms of climate change, the sort of disaster resilience aspect of that, or maybe the non-point source runoff. Would that strengthen a proposal, or is it better to focus more narrowly? Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely makes sense. Projects generally do fit into more than one theme. And we prefer to have somebody choose one, but then within the proposal you can say, in the narrative, you can discuss how it touches on other aspects. During the development of your application, it's best to talk to one of the technical experts so that they can help refine the idea, because I believe the non-point source pollution theme is fairly specific in how it needs to be implemented, and so you might have a ocean and wetland research project that does also touch on sustainability, but which one is going to be your greater emphasis, I suppose, is the best way to put it. It doesn't really hurt or not hurt. I don't think our criteria have that multiple themes. I think as long as it's got to hit it just at least one. Any other theme questions? Okay. So now to the meat. Cycle 20 terms is so cycle 20 is going to start October 1st of 2017. So we will take in all the applications, submit them with our grant proposal in April, and then by August we find out if we're funded for the next year. So it is a kind of extended application process, but that's federal government. So Cycle 20 terms is the same as last year. It's $80,000 request for any of those research planning or education projects. Anything that's a construction project it can only be a $50,000 request. I will let you know that the 306A guidelines are being reviewed by NOAA, and so next year that amount is likely to change. But because that guidance hasn't come out yet, we can't implement any of the new changes until we hear from them. The critical local need projects, which are not theme related projects, is only a $25,000 request. And that's why if you have a project and it's theme related, go ahead and pick the theme. You can request a lot more money. Theme related proposals also have a 2-year maximum term limit. So your year 1 would be 2017 to 2018, and then your year 2 would be 2018 to 2019. However, we have to apply for funding every year to NOAA. So your second year is dependent upon NOAA approving our grant. The critical local need proposals have a 1-year maximum term. If you are a non-theme related project, it has to be done within the first year, the first 12 months. Proposals must have a separate scope of work for year 1 versus year 2, separate outcomes, and separate budgets. And as I mentioned, that's because we do apply to NOAA every year for funding, and so we can't roll over any leftover year 1 funds into year 2. We can't automatically assume that we're going to get year 2 funds because we do have to go through that process with them as well. So tasks and budget should not cross years. You should have, if it's going to be a 2-year project, you should have some kind of interim deliverable at the end of year 1, whether that's draft educational materials, a report of the data that's been collected to date. So like your sampling data, if you're doing a research project, might have to sample for 2 summers, but at the end of year 1, that final report should have some preliminary information provided to us. Any questions on that?
Can I just mention one thing, Steph?
Yes.
And those amounts, that's up to, you can apply for up to those amounts.
Mm-hmm.
So, build your budget like based on what you need. Don't start with the 80,000 and then build it from there, because the review committee does look at that itemized budget.
Mm-hmm.
If it doesn't make sense, then red flags will go up.
Yes.
So keep that in mind.
Yep. Budget match and indirect. So grant requests must be matched 1-to-1 with this program. They have to be matched 1-to-1. And they have to be matched from non-federal sources. There is a caveat to that in the new uniform guidance that says if you are using other federal funding to match, then you have to provide the statutory language that says that federal funding can be used as federal match for other federal funding. And if you're getting federal funding from other sources, then you completely understood what I said. And if you don't get federal funding from other sources, then we can talk about it again later. But that match can be cash or in-kind services. And in-kind services can be your services as the applicant, volunteer work. You can use volunteer hours and rates for matching if you're doing something where you have a lot of volunteers helping with an educational project or a training or a workshop. Any kind of supplies or equipment that you're going to buy on your own. Use of facilities, like if there's fees and things associated with the use of facilities, that can be included as match. The indirect cost rates, as of last year, this changed with the new uniform guidance as well. so this year is the same as last year, that indirect rates are allowable, but only as per your federally negotiated indirect rate agreement. All universities should have this. Local governments usually don't, unless they have gone through the federal process to apply for an indirect rate agreement. If you do not have that agreement, you can still request 10% de minimis for an indirect rate. These rates can be used wholly or partially, up to your discretion entirely, as a request or a match. I will say that a lot of folks use them as match because it's a really easy way to get a certain amount of match money if you're trying to find some. But you have to have some kind of documentation. You have to have that indirect rate agreement included in your application if you have one, and if you don't have one, in the narrative of the budget proposal, you have to state that you don't have one, but that you're requesting the 10% de minimis, or you're matching the 10% de minimis, whatever you decide you want to do. These are reimbursement grants, so funds are paid at the end of the project. There are instances, however, where we do have some folks who need to have interim payments because they're a small city. They don't have that kind of capital, and we work on those details during the contracting process. But most of the time, 95% of the time, it's only at the end of the project you submit a payment request, and we reimburse you for the full amount that you've requested. Any questions on match?
Yeah, I'm just curious about the reimbursement nature of the grant. Are salaries not allowed to be included in budgets for these grants?
No, we have some people request salary. A lot of times there'll be, like, the universities will have a professor who requests 50% match and 50% request for salary, or they'll have they want to pay a research assistant, and so that'll be the research assistant's the request, and the professor provides their salary as match. So it just depends on how you want to structure your proposal.
Yeah, but I was just curious because I mean, the salary would have to be paid during the years. So would that still, you know what I mean? I'm just curious to know what the reimbursement would work for that.
Right, and I guess that would have to be, we could discuss that on how that would be set up. And in the budget narrative, when we get to the application format, in the budget narrative, there is a section to provide narrative on salary, fringe, etc. And so if interim reimbursement is needed, then that would be the place where you could state that. You know, where you could say, well, we're going to hire this person, but we need to be able to pay them on a whatever basis. Generally, the projects that we have come in, the local governments have salaries established, and so they use those as match. Universities will use some of theirs as match and do a request for some, but they always, I mean, they have funding. It's kind of like it's reimbursing the university and not directly to the person.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions on indirects, budgets, match? Okay. Construction and acquisition proposals have a lot of backup materials that are needed with them, and as I had mentioned, there is a project checklist that we will assist you with. These projects have to meet the guidelines for the Section 306A Coastal Zone Management Act. That is information, there is a link to that act and the guidelines and the checklist and all of the supporting documentation needed. All of that can be found on our CIG website. So if you are considering a construction project, please call us early We do need to do a site visit before you submit anything. We want staff to be able to talk to you about the project and discuss some of the details. We have a number of people in Coastal Resources Division. As I mentioned, Sunny Emmerich is the main coastal specialist for these projects, but we also have Sean Jordan, Eddie Leonard, who likely will come out with him, with Sunny, to visit you and discuss your project and just make sure everything is going to be eligible and appropriate based on the 306A guidelines. These projects also require clearance letters from the Georgia Historic Preservation Division and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. We have templates of those letters online. They are very used to getting these letters, and they will send a reply once they've reviewed. You have to send them a letter requesting a review of your proposal. So once you do that, they will end up sending you a reply. In your application to us, we just need a copy of the letter that you requested their review, because sometimes their review doesn't come back by the time the application is due, but when the letter does come back, we need a copy of it immediately. All of that information goes to NOAA, and it goes to them so that they can have all the information that they need in order to do their NEPA reviews. So I touched on that. And these projects cannot begin until NOAA does complete their environmental compliance reviews. So if they do the review and they determine that you get a categorical exclusion, no further information is needed, you're approved to go forward with the project. We receive that approval, we let you know, we submit into a contract with you, and then the project can begin. If NOAA needs additional information, then they might come back and say, well, we would like to have this, this information, or we need a letter from them saying they're going to follow these guidelines, or it's kind of a work in progress. So right now, we actually have 2 construction projects where the applicant is needing to provide additional information to NOAA, so they actually haven't started. We probably won't start their project till December 1st, and it's just part of the NEPA review. It can take a little bit longer. And as I had mentioned, the guidelines and all this information about construction projects can be found on our CIG website. Is anybody here considering a construction project? Okay. Do you have any particular questions about the 306A process? No? Ma'am? No? You're good? Maybe? Okay. We can talk later if you want to discuss it more in depth then. And I strongly urge you to take a look at the research criteria. We have 2 different versions. The technical review committee, when they receive your proposals, are going to score and rank them according to this criteria. This criteria was put out in the RFP that went out on the public notice. The criteria are also on our website, and we have 2 different versions. We have a version for non-research related projects and a version for research related projects. And the only difference in them is that the research related projects have a couple of criteria related to the scientific merit and other research related topics, versus the non-research related criteria doesn't have that scientific merit, but it does have a practicality and planning priority requirements, that criteria that are different than the research one. And if you have any question on whether you're a research or a non-research related project, please just let me know and I'll be happy to tell you. But it is best to review those criteria, and as you're putting your proposal together, make sure you're touching on each of those topics. Okay. Is there anything, any questions so far about the process? Okay. So the proposal submission. Prior to submittal, I highly, highly, highly recommend that you fully read the RFP and read the application instructions. This year we have made a very large change in that there is not going to be a letter of intent. There is actually going to be a competitive pre-application and an invitation-only full application. So please ensure that you make note of those deadlines, understand the differences in the submittal guidelines, the proposal templates for the pre and full application, and consider the evaluation criteria. And definitely, if you have any question through the process whatsoever, please call me, and if I don't know the answer, then I can put you in touch with the right staff member that does, and we can help you along the way. This presentation is also going to be online, so phone numbers, websites, and stuff, we can get that to you. The pre-application submittal is competitive. It is going to be due by 4:30 Friday, December 6th. There is a 5-page...
December
2nd, I'm sorry, December 2nd. It is a 5-page maximum that excludes the cover sheet. So you're going to see on our website and in the application instructions, you're provided this cover sheet. This sheet must be signed. We need to know that whatever organization you're representing has agreed that it's okay for you to submit an application to us for federal funding, because federal funding comes with various requirements, auditing requirements, and other things in the contracting process that we don't want to get too far down the line and then have your organization say, wait a minute, we don't want to accept federal funding. So it has to be signed. Behind this will be 5 pages maximum of your proposal, narrative proposal. It should be single space, 12-point font, 1-inch margins. Signed cover sheet. This competitive pre-proposal is going to summarize the project goals, your relevance to the coastal management, general tasks to be performed, and an overall estimated budget. And I will show you the application format here in just a moment. The pre-application can be emailed to me. You can save it as a PDF and just email it directly to me. It doesn't have to be sent by mail. We don't need multiple copies of it. I just need one PDF version, which is different than the full application.
And we can just scan the signed cover sheet, or would you like for us to submit that?
No, you can scan the signed cover sheet.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then for the pre-application, you just want the itemized, estimated budget, correct? Not the narrative?
Correct. So the next slide is going to show you that.
Sorry.
Yeah, no problem. So cover sheet must be signed. As she had mentioned, it can be scanned in. Background and justification section is going to provide a project overview of 4,000 characters or less. It's kind of like your proposal abstract. The coastal management relevance, which includes the practical use of the project. How are coastal managers going to use this information? How is this going to benefit the public? Project goals, be specific and measurable within the terms of the agreement. So you know that this is a 1-year or 2-year project. So within that 1 year or 2 year, make sure you have very specific measurable goals and a timeline associated with those. Task descriptions, as I mentioned before, different for year 1 and year 2 if you have a 2-year project. At this point for the pre-application, we want to know what your task title is, your task objective, and your task deliverables. And an estimated budget. So it's going to be the overall total cost. So if you have a 2-year project, just give us the 2 years in separate columns, but an overall total that is separated by the categories. And those categories, in the application instructions, you'll see that there is a table. In section C of the estimated budget, there is a table there. And that table indicates the different categories for salary, fringe, equipment, travel, supplies, subcontract, construction, other, indirect. So we don't need a budget narrative in the pre-application, but we do need to have some type of realistic overall budget. And there has to be the minimum 1-to-1 match. So on the CIG website, aside from the RFP, there are these application instructions. These application instructions, which I can also email to you if you have signed in and provided your email address. I'll send them directly to you. Please be sure, it lists each of these sections. It discusses what each of those project overview, management relevance, project goals, what each of those sections needs to describe. They are associated with what we've had in the criteria. So as long as you follow the format and follow the instructions, look at the criteria, you should do fairly well. Any questions on the pre-application format? The pre-application review is going to be comprised of various people in the pre-application review team. Those are going to be the Coastal Management Program technical staff and program manager. So Kelly, Jennifer, myself, Sunny, and Jan are going to be on that team, as well as if we have any particular subject matter experts that are here at Coastal Resources Division. If somebody submits a proposal on blackgill and shrimp research, then we're going to call in our fisheries expert and have them review that with us and make sure it's got sound scientific research associated with it, that it's going to meet a coastal management need, etc. And then we also have a representative from the Coastal Advisory Council. So we have one person from that council coming in, and we're going to review all of these applications on January 6th. So the pre-applications are going to be reviewed for applicability to our program, demonstration of that coastal need, making sure that there are clear project goals and budget soundness, as well as if you're a past applicant, what your past performance has been. And past performance includes if you've received a grant in the past, have you completed your reporting on time? Did you ask for extensions? Were there delays in your project? Were there, just issues with implementing the project in the past? If you are a new person, then you get a nay, because we don't know anything about you yet. So all of us will sit down, we'll look at these areas and rank those projects. And then selected applicants after that will be invited to submit a full application. And we will notify you. I'll be sure to email or call by January 13th, which is the following Friday after we review. So that the week following January 6th, you'll get some kind of feedback. And all applicants will get review team feedback. So if you are invited to submit a full application, you might get some feedback on, we really like your proposal, but we think these things might need to be tweaked a little bit, or have you considered XYZ, blah, blah, blah. If you are not invited back, you will get that exact same feedback, but it'll say, I'm sorry, you haven't been invited for a full application, but here are some things that we recognize that could make your proposal better for next year. Any questions on this? Okay. Now, if you are invited back for the full application, again, it is competitive. It is due by 4:30 on Friday, February 17th. It is a 12-page maximum, and that is also excluding the cover sheet, your budget, which is the full budget table and budget narrative, and any supplemental documentation. So your proposal itself can be good and meaty. Give us good details. Again, single space, 12-point font, 1-inch margins, and it's basically a detailed expansion of your pre-application. So you can take your pre-application and you're just adding to it. You're not having to create a whole new format. It's just adding to what you've already started. This does have to be mailed in hard copy form to me, because these get mailed to the 5-person technical review team who is across our 11-county area, and they review them before we all meet to discuss. The full application submittal must include 2 originals. So that cover sheet that you have signed for your pre-application, make sure you get 2 of those signed. And then you have the originals with you, and you can put those 2 cover sheet originals on 2 applications and put those in with your entire packet. 5 double-sided copies of your proposal, and 1 digital version on Word format. And I know a lot of people might have issues with sending Word documents because you don't want somebody to change it. But when I have a 20-page grant that I have to submit to NOAA, it is a whole lot easier to copy and paste from your proposal into the NOAA format rather than having to retype, potentially 20 new applications. So it's really important that it's in Word format, otherwise it's a tremendous amount of work. And that can be submitted on a CD or a flash drive. The format, the beginning part here will look very similar. So it's got the cover sheet, the background and justification, which is a carryover or a revision from your pre-application. If you get feedback from the pre-application review team, they might say, some of the background or justification could be tweaked. You can tweak it. If it looks good, you could just leave it. Task descriptions are going to be improved upon. You're going to have it's going to be the same format, but you're going to have additional details in there that include specific deliverables, specific dates of completion, and specific people who are going to perform those tasks. So if the PI is doing one thing, but the research assistant is going to do a different, task, then you're going to specify who those are. It's going to have a communications plan is going to be added to it. So you want to have a plan for outreach and information dissemination, and distinguish between whether it's an educational activity or a training. And those definitions are in the application instructions. So when you get to the full application instructions, it's going to talk about that communications plan and the definitions, NOAA's definition of an educational activity or a training. That's something that they want to know. It's going to have detailed project timeline and milestones, as well as project management. So, who are the people involved with the project, and including any partners, and what is their role in the project. The budget narrative and the standard forms will also be included in this, and so those are also on our website. They're going to be the more detailed tables, and then after the tables, it's going to have a specific budget narrative. So this is not included in your 12 pages. This will be separate. This will be considered a supplemental information. And that budget narrative and tables are separated into year 1 and year 2, as I mentioned. And in the application instructions, it does also go through the budget narrative, those specific categories for personnel, fringe, equipment, travel, etc., and what all needs to be included in that narrative to help explain what the numbers mean. Supplemental information, there's a lot up here. You may or may not need all, some, or part of this depending on what your project is. Match in-kind support letters of support. If you are hiring a contractor that contractor does not need to provide a letter of support because you're presumably going to be requesting federal funds to pay for that person. So they're not really a partner. They're not supporting you. You're paying them to do something. But if you have another organization, a nonprofit group, a school group, a volunteer group, 4-H, another county, another city, whoever that is providing in-kind services or match, then we need to know that they have agreed to do that. So you want to get a letter of support from them. If you're a critical local need project, you'll need to demonstrate what that, where that need came from with that supporting documentation, either from some kind of commission-approved plan. If there are any plans that you reference in your proposal, such as you're referencing Camden County's comprehensive plan, we need to have some kind of reference for that, whether it's a link to a website that we can directly access it to, whether it's a copy of the portion of the plan that's relevant to your project that's included in that, something of that nature. If you have an indirect cost rate agreement, we need a copy of that documentation. If you do not have an indirect cost rate agreement, please be sure in your budget, in the indirect category, you specify that you're requesting or matching that 10% de minimis. Certifications form, everybody has to have this. And this is also on our website. This is just another way to say that you're going to follow all the federal rules and regulations. You're not going to discriminate against anybody. It's going to be consistent with our program. There's 13 different things here that it says what you would adhere to for receiving this type of funding. So this has to be signed for all applications. An authorizing resolution is only if you're a local government, and that is the resolution saying that your commission council has agreed to submit this application. The 306A project checklist is only needed if you're a construction project, and again, we can go over that in more detail. We're more than happy to help you try to fill that out. It is fairly lengthy. Attorney title opinion or certification of real property ownership, that's an either or. If you have a title opinion, you don't need the certification. If you don't have a title opinion, please provide certification. That's only if you're a construction project. So we need to make sure that you own that property. The review request letters from the Historic Preservation Division as well as the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, again, only for construction projects. And site maps and site plans. Generally, those are mainly for construction projects, but if there's a planning project and you want to provide a site map, then please feel free to do so. It definitely helps us understand the location of where you're, or a research project, it helps us understand where you're actually going to be doing your work.
Just have a question.
Yeah, I was going to say, any questions on this?
Authorizing resolution, do you only need that if the local government is the applicant, or will you also need that if you were proposing a plan or a project within a local municipality?
Only if the local government is the applicant. If you are doing a planning project that you need to partner with a local government on, then they can provide that letter of support. Or if you're doing a planning project that you hope, like if you're just doing it on your own and you hope to be able to bring it to council, if they're not partnering or providing match of any kind, then you don't need a resolution from them. But in your proposal, in order for us to determine how transferable your project is going to be, make sure you have a very clear dissemination plan. and like, you know, who is it that you're going to talk to? What meetings do you plan on attending? Who are you going to try to communicate with? How are you going to try to get them to, how are you going to try to train this group of people on your project?
I'm sorry, can you
Yes.
clarify, if the local government is a partner, is it just a letter of support, or is it that resolution that you need?
Just the letter of support if they're a partner.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions? Okay. We're almost done, I promise. The full application review is the CIG Technical Review Committee. This is a group of 5 coastal community professionals that include the State Resource Management, which is Jill Andrews, our local government, an NGO, someone from academia, and then a citizen at large. And so these group of people will come together in March of 2017 and review all of the full applications, and they will rank those full applications based on the research and non-research criteria. So they get all the applications before the meeting in March. They rank them. We all meet together in here and put the rankings up and discuss if there's any major issues. And then funding is, we go from top to bottom until we exhaust our funding. Applicants that have been recommended for funding, as I had mentioned, will be included in that NOAA application. And that application is due to NOAA by the end of April. And we usually hear from them by the end of August, before the end of August, if we have approval. And if we do, then I will be contacting you and letting you know NOAA has officially approved the project, and we'll be entering into contract status that would begin October 1, 2017. Any questions on the review process? Yes, ma'am.
So then do applicants find out in March how their grant has been scored or whether it's been included in that?
Yes, I do contact I will contact all of the full applicants and let you know whether you are recommended to be included in our grant or whether we exhausted funding before we could get to your project. There have been times where we might not fund a project, like a project is, we'll have 2 or 3 projects at the end that our funding gets exhausted, but then during the course of the year, one of the funded projects ends up not being able to be implemented. We had that situation happen recently where there was loss of staff wasn't replaced, the project couldn't get going in time, and it had to be terminated, so there was funding now available for the next highest ranked project. So there is that possibility that could occur. It's fairly rare that happens. But if it does, if we end up having funding left over, we might contact the next person down the list. Okay, so some additional tips. Please read the RFP and application instructions. If you have any questions, I am totally here to talk to you, to help you work through the process. I can get you to the right people. We want you to be successful. We have money, we want to give it to you. We need to, please demonstrate a sincere desire to conduct the outreach to a targeted audience. Sincere desire meaning, get involved with people. Don't just say, we're going to create a brochure and put it in our visitor center. That's, yes, that's outreach, but we would really like to see how are you going to get involved with the public, how are you going to get the information out, how are you going to discuss with land managers, coastal managers. Include volunteers where applicable. Please use their time for match if you're going to be using volunteers.
Steph, can I add to that?
Yeah.
That volunteers think broadly, if it's community, citizens around a table in a planning process, those are also volunteers.
make sure you're delivering useful products. As I had mentioned, research should not result in models that are one-time runs or cannot be transferred or cost thousands of dollars to update. We want to make sure that we have something our coastal managers can use right now. Planning and education projects should increase the capacity of a local government or institution, not just to have a plan sitting on a shelf and never end up being implemented. Please clearly demonstrate how the project results will be used by the local government's resource managers. Be specific and name names. If you know that you're talking with Jan about doing a project on living shorelines and you're going to do this research because you talked to her, then say that. You know, tell us, you know, I've spoken with this person and this is what we have agreed to do and this is how my information is going to be useful to her. Please make that very clear. But also, if you're going to name names, please make sure you do talk to that person. We have had projects come in where somebody has been mentioned and reviewed it, and I'm like, oh, so you talked to this, you know, this applicant, and they're like, I never talked to them. So, you know, when that happens, it's like, doesn't leave a nice, warm, fuzzy feeling. Staff, student, volunteer time charged or matched to the subgrant proposal must be documentable, and thoroughly justified if claiming 100% of their time. It is very rare that a person will spend 100% of their time on one project. If that is the case, please be sure that you make it clear that this person is being specifically hired for this project. And why that is. So, you know, we know many of the professors at the universities and institutions. If a major professor indicates 100% of their time is going to be on this project, I don't think so. I'm pretty sure they're doing other things. So the documentability is your responsibility. We don't need the information. I don't need to report to NOAA every single hour you worked. But by accepting federal funds, you are accepting the potential federal audit responsibility. So if you are going to say X person is going to work X hours, then you need to make sure your records will indicate that if for some reason an audit were to come through. Budgets should be carefully considered and reviewed. Be sure to be realistic and reasonable in your pre and full applications. In the past, in our letters of intent, we did have, particularly last year, pretty much every letter of intent said we're requesting $80,000. And then the proposal would come in and it would be $35,000. And it's like, well, you know, that's not very realistic. So in your pre-application, please consider, it can fluctuate between your pre and your full, but try to be fairly reasonable, because we do look at that. Late, incomplete, or inaccurately formatted proposals will not be considered and will be returned to the applicant. The instructions are really, really detailed. If I can't find information, if we have to keep looking back and forth through the application to try and figure out the information that we need in order to make a decision, then, you know, it's going to take too much time and we're just not going to want to read through it. And don't hesitate to contact me. Please, please, please. Email, phone. I'm here 8 to 4:30. If I don't answer, leave a message. I'm usually pretty quick with my emails. So if you don't hear from me, it's usually because I'm on vacation. But I'm not taking vacation until January. So are there any other questions? Yes.
I just have one question about the tasks, the specificity of the tasks in year 1 and year 2. So for research-related projects, it would be common to, for example, if you're doing a survey or an experiment, to have that last multiple years, that you get more data and more useful data by having a longer-term experiment. So that would mean, for example, the two would be overlapping, but you would be doing some of the same tasks. Would that be a problem? Like you're not allowed to do an experiment that lasts more than 1 year?
No, yeah, you can do it. It's just you'd want to separate those tasks. So you'd want to have a year 1 task schedule and then a year 2 task schedule. And you could have the same tasks in year 1 and 2.
Just making sure about that.
Just, yeah, specify them as separate years. And that goes back to how I have to enter the data into our NOAA application.
Sure, absolutely.
So it's just easier for me to find and reiterate to NOAA.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions? Okay. Yes, Brian.
If you accepted on the inside, there's a final report then that we would submit
Mm-hmm.
to you guys too. Is that after I know you said October 1st would be the start.
Mm-hmm.
Basically just October 1st through September 30th.
Mm-hmm.
And then how much of a deadline do you have after that? Or do you have to have that final report by September 30th?
Oh no. So the final report is 7 days after. So interim reports are always due by April 7th. Final reports are always due by October 7th.
Take a whole week beforehand.
Yeah.
So it's
A whole week to get it all together.
There's no salary after September 30th. The budget shuts off, so there's no salary.
Yes. Yeah.
Consideration.
You said interim reports would be when?
April 7th. Mm-hmm. Of every year. And that's because we have to get our reports into them before the end of the month.
Sure.
So, and there's always people that are late. So, any other questions? Okay.
Thank you.
Does anybody need the website for me to pull up the website? Have you all seen the CIG website? Okay. And yeah, and if there's something on there that, you know, if there's a link you can't get to a template or information, then just give me a shout. All right. Thank you. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
And if you haven't signed in, please do so, and I can email you. I'll email you information.